This is Financial Standard, the definitive source of news, thought leadership and analysis for Australian wealth management professionals. Financial Standard. Take the lead.
I'm Cassandra Baldini with Financial Standard. Last week, I attended the AFA Conference in the Gold Coast and had the opportunity to speak with its Chief Executive Officer, Phil Anderson. Phil spoke to me about the future of advice.
It's my first conference, so I can't comment too much on the prior conferences, but there seems to be an air of positivity that has definitely been felt. Do you think this is different to prior years?
I mean, I think every conference is different in certain ways. We haven't had a conference since 2019, which is back to the very early days of the FACEA regime. And in fact, it was about the time that the government announced the first extension of the exam and the education deadlines. And the year before, when we're up here in 2018, was in the middle of the Royal Commission. So, the time is so very different now. But also the thing that is so substantially different is we were under the hammer in 2018 and 19 because of the Royal Commission, because of the media response to the Royal Commission and the demand for regulatory reform. So we're in this period of it hadn't happened yet, but we knew it was going to happen. And we've gone through most of that now. But what has fundamentally changed is the Parliament, and I'm talking about both sides of politics, have really come to realise that, firstly, financial advice is really valuable. People need financial advice. And I think the COVID issues just highlighted that, the uncertainty, mental health, the incredible value that comes with financial advice in that you have confidence about the future, you have an understanding of where you're at. Dealing with those emotional triggers. So advice gives so many benefits in terms of how happy people feel and the way it impacts the behaviours that they demonstrate, so that they are doing things to look after their own financial and happiness or well-being. So the Parliament now, I think, has a better appreciation of the value of advice. They've realised that what's happened recently has been quite detrimental for the number of advisors, and that's been quite detrimental for people having access to advice. And I think, quite concerned now that there are many Australians who are at risk of no longer being able to access financial advice. So I think it's a fundamentally different environment. And what we're doing in this conference is, the theme is Thrive. So it's about recognising that we've come through a tough period, but now it's about looking forward positively to the future, which we obviously hope that the regulatory trajectory will be heading in a positive direction. Hopefully we can start to get more people to come into the profession, but everyone, or the majority of people in the profession, will be doing well because the demand is so high.
That's a really great point. I mean, interesting that you touched on bringing people into the profession, because yesterday you gave quite a positive speech. There was definitely a really good feeling and that there's going to be a better outcome going forward. I guess you said the educational standards are the hottest debate that we've seen for a while, or certainly you've seen for a while. When Stephen Jones, gave his address to the conference earlier in the week, he felt that the educational pathway was balanced, or he felt that the bar wasn't set too high or wasn't set too low. Now, you've said the AFA have supported that there should be an educational pathway, but you've also been quite vocal on that it kind of has been set too high, with that pass mark being a credit, so on and so forth. Now, there are consultations under review currently, and I think the minister said he's going to wait to see the outcome of that. What do you think that could be changed to ensure that more new entrants do come into the advice sector and make sure it actually is balanced?
Yeah. So there's a few things. When it comes to the exam, we don't expect any change. So the exam, the deadline is the end of this month, and the consequences of that are very stark for, we think, around 500 advisors who will necessarily need to leave the profession. There is a pathway for them to come back, but they have to be off the register before the end of September so that they can sit the exam and come back later on. On education, it's quite different. The minister, when he was the shadow minister in December of last year, made an announcement about a experienced advisor pathway for someone who had 10 years experience. And there wasn't a lot of detail at that time. It was no further study, 10 years experience, you're good to stay. Now, the comments that he made earlier this week do suggest that he remains firmly committed to that. But what we've seen in the consultation paper released very recently is more detail around it. So it's around 10 years experience as at the 1st of January 2019, over the course of the previous 15 years. There's a good record requirement there. That threshold date is quite different to what the former government consulted on in December of last year and led to submissions on the 1st of February, where they said the 10 years would be assessed as at 1 January 2026. So we're talking about, his proposal is 9 years earlier than the former government's proposal, and there'll be people who may have assumed that they would have got some recognition, but they now potentially are not going to get that if it proceeds on the way that it's been proposed. Now, he did make comments to suggest that he thought that what was proposed was appropriate and that what it was doing was adequately recognising experience. This has been a long debate. We're not coming to this at the start of the process. We're coming to it maybe somewhere around the middle. And obviously we had Brian Knight, the CEO of Kaplan Professional, talk to us yesterday about all the study that has been undertaken. Now, why I said this is the most hotly debated subject is most of the regulatory change, we've largely been on one side of it. We've either disagreed with it or we've agreed with it. The education is different in that there's lots of people who are on each side. Some who think the government has proposed to go too far, and some that think that the government's got it quite right. And that's not it's not a good situation to be in, because it's a trade-off here that we want to hold on to as many of the existing advisors as possible. Yes, as long as they are quality advisors and they're doing the right thing, then yes, absolutely we want to hold on to them. But on the other hand, we've got people who are saying, we've done all this hard work to get where we need to go, and will this undermine this, and will this impact the recognition of financial advice as a profession going forward? And that's not something that we can underestimate, and most particularly because of the challenging period over the last few years, the Royal Commission and everything, and the criticism that the profession suffered in the media. So people are balancing these two things. And so I'm just talking about the experienced side of it. And there are different elements to it as well. That's why we have proposed that, and this is in consultation with a group of other professional associations, is yes, let's offer an experienced advisor pathway, but let's put a sunset date on it so that it doesn't keep it open for years to come, and that we will get to a point where there is a minimum tertiary education standard that's required. But it's not going to be the way FASEA had framed it. It's going to be different. So yeah, a 10-year sunset clause. We said let's do it as at 1 January 2022. So 10 years experience as at that date, the start of this year, and then having 10 years until a sunset date of 1 January 2032. And we think that should cover a lot of people who are at this point considering whether they stay or they go. And yes, there will be this good track record, because that's consistent with what the government has said. We've said that they should still be required to do the ethics unit. Now, Brian Knight made the point yesterday that a lot of people have already done that ethics unit. So this won't necessarily disadvantage a lot of people to do that. But we're saying that that's a minimum requirement because of our ability to say, everyone has done the ethics unit. It's an ethical profession beyond question.
So it seems like there's a lot of meeting in the middle here, and almost that the industry had to really go around full circle and go through that darker time to get to a fairer result. And do you feel that's something that will be positively accepted by the advice industry and those 500 advisors who are, looking at what they need to do now going forward?
So the 500 advisors are the ones who've failed the exam or that have been unable to pass it to this point. I think that unless they can pass the exam, the education standard is largely irrelevant because they can't come back unless they pass the exam. If they come back, then they've got to deal with the education standard. It's more, and we don't have the exact numbers of how many people have completed the education standard as set by FASEA. Brian talked about this might impact around 3,000 advisors. And it's difficult to do that analysis because the data is not complete. But what I want to say is that we're also recommending that there needs to be better recognition of prior learning and experience for those people who don't want to rely upon the existing advisor pathway and want to do the education. So we've said that there are a range of solutions there. One is that rather than have it for existing advisors as a graduate diploma, have it as a 4-subject graduate certificate with access to some credits. Or if it's going to stay as an 8-subject graduate diploma, then give people subjects credit based upon their years of experience. And we've said over 15 years experience, you should get 3 subjects credit. So we're happy to support an experienced advisor pathway with a sunset date and greater recognition of prior learning and experience. So those who want to do the study, and Brian highlighted yesterday that a lot of people have chosen to do it and a lot of people have got value out of it. Not everyone, but there's a decent chunk who believe that it's actually been good for them to do that. So we want those options to be there. And the other important part of the education reforms is how we can change the requirements for new entrants to get more new entrants, to remove the rigidity of the current model where you've got to select that you're going to do a financial planning degree at the start of the degree, and you've got to do it through an institution that has been recognised by FASEA. We're saying that we need to have more flexibility in that so that people can come through a range of different university pathways with minimum standards to become eligible to do financial advice.
More flexibility seems to be quite the theme. Michelle Levy's discussion and you're hosting her panel discussion was extremely interesting. There's obviously a number of changes that have been really well received by the industry. What do you think? I know you've said this before, but can you tell us what you think the biggest highlight of the quality of advice review is and something that perhaps needs another look over?
Yeah, so in terms of the quick and easy and great wins, you have to say getting rid of FDSs. The amount of work that goes into doing FDSs is huge. And Michelle just said, well, look, what's the point? They're already getting disclosure of fees through their periodic statements. So that's an easy one. It's so easy to give that up, to stop doing that, and it makes so much of a difference. That's really easy. There are other ones that are really big, but there's potentially more work in them. Is getting rid of the best interest duty. Okay, that's talking about getting rid of the best interest duty in the legislation. It'd still be an obligation that applied through the Code of Ethics, but what it does do is it takes out of play the safe harbour. Now, Michelle's really emphasised the fact that the best interest duty is about the process you've followed rather than the outcome for the client. She's saying a good advice obligation is all about the outcome. If we assess it in terms of good advice, then we are consumer focused. We're making sure that the advice is delivered a better outcome for them. So there'll be changes that need to take place. There's a lot of re-education that will come with that one. So it's a really big one, and it will take out some of the costs involved in preparing advice, but there'll be a change management exercise required. The other really big part of this is the outcome of removing the obligation to provide advice documents. And she's been very strong about that and has been for quite some time. So there'll be adjustment that needs to take place there, that advisors will need to think, clients will have the right to ask for advice documentation, and we would expect that to be something that's agreed up front, not at the end of the process, and you've got to go back and build it from scratch. We think that's potentially a real big game changer as well, because we're taking a lot of work out of the process, and particularly given that all the feedback is that clients don't value SOAs. So I'd say they're probably the three big things. There's a range of other things that are important, but they're the three big ones for us. I think the other part of your question was, where is their concern? I would put it as relatively limited concern, but important concerns. And it's not about, in my view, it's not about the direction of what Michelle's proposing. It's about the extent of other controls to ensure that the client outcome is a good outcome. And two critical areas. One is the obligations that might apply to someone who provides personal advice but is not a relevant provider. And our concerns are with respect to the type of advice that can be provided by such a person. And our view is it should be limited through some means to what is less complex advice, and therefore the risk to the consumer of client detriment is much reduced. So if it's relatively simple advice, then it's not unreasonable that it would be provided by someone who has less experience. The question, though, is what is the experience and education requirement of the person who's providing advice, who's not otherwise bound by the obligations that apply to financial advisors? And at the moment, that's going to be probably linked back to RG 146 and specifically the Corporations Act requirement in Section 912A. And we're saying that needs to be looked at, that there needs to be a higher education standard that applies to someone who's allowed to provide personal advice but is not bound by all the obligations that apply to financial advisors. So we think solutions can be worked out in that space to make sure that they're not providing complex advice and they do have adequate skills and qualifications to provide the advice that they are providing. The AFA has been very clear on this, that whilst it would be possible for advisors to push back on this concept of advice being provided by non-relevant providers, we're saying that we don't have enough advisors to meet the needs of Australians. And the advice profession needs to be focused on what's the best outcome for clients. And if they can get advice that meets their relatively simple needs through another mechanism, whether that's people working for product providers or it's digital advice, then we have to support that. We have to support it, but we will continue to be arguing for sensible controls around the complexity and the risk of client detriment, and also about higher education standards.
It does seem that some work needs to be done still, and that is a phrase that I've heard used a few times in a few different speeches. What do you think the advice sector, what more does the advice sector need to do? What is that work? What does it look like to them?
Well, I think in this particular issue, it's about the consultation process that, the discussions are being had with the Quality Advice Review. The submissions are due in today. And that will have to continue to get the right balance there, to make sure that it is limited to relatively straightforward advice and that there are appropriate education standards around it. And I'm really comfortable with that process because Michelle Levy and her team from Treasury and the Quality Advice Review Project have been incredibly available and incredibly engaged. They've spent time not working, but they've visited financial advice practices and that have many conversations and they've attended conferences. I've been to I've been to 2 conferences where Michelle has actually attended. I've been to other ones where she has been zoomed in. I can't imagine there's been any other exercise where the person leading it has been so available and so willing to engage and listen to the advice profession. And I have no doubt that she's also out there consulting with a much broader range of stakeholders, regulators, consumer groups. I think that the approach that they've taken to get the right outcome on this is exactly what we would want and expected to have taken place.
Absolutely. And we do look forward to the end result at the end of the year. I guess moving on now, and, there is a positivity here, definitely this year at the conference, but it's also, there's an underpinning of this might be the last. I mean, have you had any conversations around that?
Well, I think in talking about it being the last, that is a discussion around should the merger with the FPA take place, then could this be the last of its type? And I think that's something that a lot of people have reflected upon. The AFA annual conference has been a highlight in the year. It's brought people together. It has always been about engaging, about the community, about refreshing thinking, about talking about new ways of doing things, hearing from great speakers, about inspiring people. And so and particularly here at this venue at the RACV Pines on the Gold Coast, which is, I think I said the other night, 6 of the 10 AFA conferences that I've been at have been here at this venue. And it's got that vibe that comes with a conference where people really enjoy themselves. So, yeah, giving that up is something for consideration. Should the members decide, once something is put to them, they want to go ahead with the merger, and that is entirely a choice of the members, then it would undoubtedly be the outcome that what the old AFA conference would be rolled into, or we'd have a united AFA and FPA annual conference. So that would be a bigger event, no doubt. It'd draw a lot more people, and it would be done in a bigger venue. So it'd be unlikely that we'd be coming back here for it. Should that happen, it's entirely up to members. I think that we would still be able to put on a really good event.
And how confident are you that you'll get that 75% member vote to approve the merger?
Yeah, I don't think we can take anything for granted. I think we've got to continue to be consulting with members, and having been here at the conference was a really good opportunity to do that. We had David Sharp, the chair of the FPA, and Sam Pereira doing a Q&A session on Wednesday evening. Yesterday morning, we had a members-only event for AFA members, and they all had a good opportunity to put their question forward, and also moving around the conference over the course of the last 2 days, there's been lots of opportunities for conversation. But that's not the end of this. We're going to do a series of state-based consultation meetings over the course of the next month, so that we give everyone, not just those who came to the conference, but everyone a chance to have a conversation. How confident am I? Well, I don't want to take it for granted. I think that if we can put a good case forward, then we've got a reasonable prospect of getting the 75%. But that will be up to the board of the AFA to demonstrate that they have listened and that they have taken on board all of the things that are important to the members of the AFA, and that they can address that in the proposals that get ultimately put forward for the members to vote on.
Well, certainly if it does go ahead, you'll be leaving behind a very long legacy. What are you most excited about if the merger does happen, about the new entity and your new position?
So I think it's important to say that it's not about leaving behind the legacy. So the AFA was formed in previous versions, because obviously it's evolved over the years and it's had different names. It was initially created in 1946, so we're now in our 76th year. But one of the things that Sam Pereira, as the president, has made really clear, and it's been part of all the discussions with the FPA, is we want to preserve their heritage. We want to respect the fact that we've got life members. We've got people who have committed themselves to the organisation for a long period of time and have been so instrumental in doing what it's achieved over that time. So we don't want to give up any of that. So we need to make sure that in a merged entity, the things the AFA does well are incorporated into that. And one of the really strong suits is our communities. Whether it's the conference event and the community that we build through that, or it's our Inspire Females community, or our Gen X community that for younger advisors. We need to hold on to those things so that in the new entity they are replicated. And there's a need for this merger consultation process to address that and build that into the structure going forward. So those discussions are underway, and the feedback that the FPA leadership have got from attending the AFA conference is there's some really great stuff there that would be very much in everyone's best interest to find a way of holding on to.
Well, that's extremely positive to hear. And it seems like there are a lot of changes, but for the best, perhaps, that we're going to see this year. Is there anything else you'd like to share in terms of an outlook, or, just looking back on, you are celebrating being back at the conference and just looking back at the history of it. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us for a final comment?
If I was to wrap up, I'd say that the AFA has such a strong bond with its community. I mean, the thing that we get from coming to this conference is what impact it makes on them, knowing that they belong to an association that is focused on looking after their interests and advocating for them, and just the fact that it's great to have someone advocating for you, but you want to belong to something. You want to belong to something that you believe in, and that's really important to a lot of people. That the AFA gives them something that they can hold on to, and that it creates the framework around the community that they exist within. Their friends, their colleagues, where they go to find out how they can improve their business, how they can get answers to questions. So that sense of community is really critical. And I think the conference just has highlighted the importance of that for so many people who have attended this conference. And we think that's so important to hold on to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time, Phil Anderson.
Thank you, Cassie.
No worries.
Thanks for listening to this Financial Standard podcast. For more information, visit financialstandard.com.au. Please keep in mind that the information discussed in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider personal circumstances. Reliance should not be placed on any content without further independent financial research and advice.